Devlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. Joe Devlin with your Office of Cannabis Policy and Enforcement. The item before you tonight is an amended staffing plan to address the regulating of legal cannabis and conducting enforcement of legal and illegal cannabis activities. Sacramento is and has been a leader in the state and the country in the regulation of cannabis. We were one of the first cities to adopt a comprehensive regulatory and permitting structure, and the first city in our region to take head-on the challenges associated with illegal residential cultivation. Being a leader in the state also comes with the challenges of dealing with the unknown. Council adopted an original staffing model in 2016, and in November of 2017, the Council approved an amended staffing plan that reflected the lessons learned from 2016 and 17. At that time, I said we would likely be back due to evaluating ongoing staffing needs based on workloads, and here we are. The proposal before you today is based again on lessons learned, current workload priorities, and the best available information to date. There are several proposed staffing changes, but most importantly, enforcement remains a top priority. In July of this year, our enforcement program went into full swing. We began with what was believed to be 1,200 homes that were used for illegally cultivating cannabis in residential neighborhoods. 7 months later, we have served 223 criminal search warrants, seized over 117,000 cannabis plants, and issued tens of millions of dollars in administrative penalties. The result is we currently believe we have reduced the number of illegal residential cultivators operating in our neighborhoods by nearly 60%. While this is significant progress, it is estimated that there are some 500 illegal grows remaining. Our success at reducing the illegal residential cultivation has also generated significant administrative burdens. The most significant staff change in the proposal before you tonight is an addition of 4 positions to the City Attorney's Office. This includes 1 attorney, a legal secretary, a paralegal, and a legal assistant. The other proposed changes include the addition of Development Project Manager to the Community Development Department. This position will serve as a single point of contact for applicants as they move through the complicated building permit process. This position will help CDD process the volume of applications they currently face and also help prevent cannabis-related projects from causing delays to other permits in the approval process. In all, the proposal calls for adding 8 positions and eliminating 4 for a net increase of 4 FTE. The proposed changes will allow us to keep enforcement a top priority, be efficient with providing good customer service, and adjust for the administrative needs in the management of both legal and illegal cannabis. Okay. I thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Let's hear from the members of the public. We have 2, then we have the City Council.
2 speakers are Mackworthy and Malachi Amen.
How many more amendments? It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. All these jobs were attached to the cannabis money. All this was attached with slave words were said, we will give you an opportunity. But yet and still, we're going to make that money that you expect to make, going to hire some white folks as attorneys. Sad, isn't it? Where is the black people that understand business? They're not here. Malachi, understand the business. That's right. Where's the NWC? You don't understand no business. Where is the business heads who was there? This man here, you don't understand no business. He doing what Jay Chanel tell him to do. That's all. In the city mayor, you don't understand no business. What corporation had you ran before you come here? That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. The reason the city manager got it there before you, he ran the redevelopment, which I cleaned his office. The real man had a heart attack, the reason they hired him. That's when they called me and said the money that for cleaning your bathroom, show it to us. I said, you should do what you've been doing all the time because that money came from Midwest. The black attorney that's in redevelopment, she gone. Now, we got some things that going to come to you that we're going to ask questions about the neighborhood association. We want something on record. You're going to give them that money? We want that on record. We want something that they file. If it's 501c4, it's a statement. 501c3, file with the United States government. Somebody stopped me in the hall. An old man said, we hear you. You hear these young boys here talking about the money. Now, you said that was $36 million left over. How much interest that money, boy? Bad for the time it was left over. That was sales tax money. Now, when the money that's over here, you were talking about nickels and dimes. It ain't going to do what you said it do. 1,200 people have been busted. We would like to know that information through the courts. Oh, who are they?
Thanks a lot, Mac. Thank
Where
you.
are the 3 districts that don't have cannabis?
Our next speaker is Malachi Amen.
Good evening, Malachi. Thank you
Good
for your
evening, Mr.
patience.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Malachi Amen, the California Urban Partnership, and also point on our local equity and marijuana policy network. We're here tonight to urge the council to ensure that this staffing plan is aligned with existing core policy. And I do want to thank Joe for the awesome work that he's been doing and, his open door policy, as well as Councilmember Chenier, and working with us on ongoing issues. But we need to have this plan aligned with existing core policy, as well as the city's state and federal platform issues that will soon come before council. Although the city appears to be poised to support greater law enforcement accountability measures at the state level, at the local level, we have much more work to stop prosecuting the war on drugs. As you know, this war has taken and devastated many thousands of lives right here in Sacramento. Fortunately, one of the critical goals of our core policy, Cannabis Opportunity, Reinvestment and Equity, is to encourage underground marijuana operations to come out of the shadows, which will enhance tax revenue. It will enhance public safety. The problem with reaching that goal is the city has not built trust with the idea that racialized enforcement of marijuana laws is a thing of the past. Without this trust, it will become increasingly difficult for inclusive economic development to play out. We have a move to build trust, and we're asking that outreach strategy be leveraged with the police presence on the cannabis policy staff, and we need someone on this staff to implement the core program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no more speakers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's hear from the council members. Vice Mayor Guerra.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank Joe, and also I know a lot of our code officers aren't here, and our police officers that work in the area aren't here, and even our city attorney division, who's been working on the enforcement of the illegal grow houses. I want to thank the development of of all the policy that went into trying to tackle the grow houses. And in my district, it's been a pretty significant issue in the south area. In some areas where it's almost entire block of that homes that could be with single families who need housing, but there have been 300 to 400 plants in those homes, and then they become ineffective for housing in the future because of mold and code issues, and they're ripping out of the infrastructure. This is about figuring out how do we better utilize our staff. The end result of this is to get 4 additional staff members, which is a very positive thing because we have more work to do in identifying some of the illegal grow houses that have been significant nuisances to the neighbors in the neighborhood down in the south area, and even up into in the different parts in the north area of the city. But it's been pretty significant down in the south area. I do have a question for Joe here. We've had an allocation of 6 code officers in existence and budgeted for. This will shift it, but I still have a question. what has been delaying us to hire 2 additional code officers?
So the code officers, there are currently 6 FTE code officers that are intended to conduct inspections and enforcement of legal and permitted cannabis businesses. 2 of those positions are currently filled. We have 30 existing dispensaries. We have a number of about 40 other either businesses that have been permitted or are those legacy operators for a total of 70. It's really going to be driven by workload. So we anticipate that we're going to be adding that 3rd code officer position this fiscal year, and probably that 4th shortly after that. But as more of these permits come online, those positions will be added. And if there's a need for those an actual 5th and 6th code officer, I will be back requesting that we put those positions back. But right now, for at least the next couple of, at least foreseeable future, I think 4 would be sufficient for doing the inspections of.
I agree with that, and again, I support your proposal to readjust the staffing plan, particularly because we get more people in the team. But still, even though we allocated up to 6 code officers, we've been at 2 all this time, and from my understanding, the demand for the code officers is still significant. So why haven't we been able to staff up for those 2 positions that we will have here? I mean, if we have a 5th, even if we readjusted the plan to have 5 officers, then the question still the question I'm still asking is, why haven't we staffed up there? So it makes no sense to even add a 5th if we haven't added the 3rd and the 4th. So what's been the delay in hiring that 3rd and 4th code officer?
Again, it's really predicated on the volume of work of the legal permitted businesses. We're going to be bringing on those 3rd and 4th code officers in the next, a couple of months, at least that 3rd one and the 4th one at some period of time. There really hasn't been a delay other than the volume of work that we are working on. But the need for that 3rd code officer is really starting to come online right now.
Still using for the illegal, but here's what I'd like to do. I want to make sure that we are ramping up all of our enforcement team. So, Mr. City Manager, today we're approving the staffing plan, but I want to make sure that if our teams are asking for more resources, and from my understanding, our code officers are basically working at capacity. I want to make sure that we get more of those code officers to have our enforcement team working at a faster rate. So that's my only concern that's happening. That has nothing to do with this plan, but it has to do more with how we ramp up those FTEs. The next thing, so that's an important factor. I want to thank the City Attorney's Office. They've been very creative in making sure that we go after the folks who've been appealing and making sure that we set a strong case about how to make sure that if we hit them in the pocketbook, they're going to stop their practice. Particularly, I do want to thank Emilio in your office. I think he spent extra hours. I think he lives in the building now, from what I understand. We should probably charge him rent. But I do want to extend my gratitude to the City Attorney's Office for that work, and also to Officer Trejo, who's been in the community. He grew up in the South area and very familiar with a lot of the families and the communities out there, and who's been working on this area. Last, I know the Law and Ledge Committee we're discussing, what we do for some of these homes, and the biggest challenge that we have, and I want to make sure that even though it's not part of this plan, but it goes into the overall thinking of how we enforce the illegal grow houses, is how do we mitigate the homes after they've been we've gone in there to confiscate their material. I've heard from a lot of neighbors that even after they leave, you have a vacant home that doesn't get boarded up and whatnot. So I want to make sure that when we go and enforce a place, that we also start mitigating the impacts to the home. And I know we're working on a policy on how we use the penalty fees, and that'll be coming to council soon. Again, my priority is to figure out how do we get those homes back to affordable families that need them. make sure that we convert the grow houses back into houses for affordable low-income families who need housing, and then that we use those mitigation fees to continue the enforcement, but also mitigation to uplift that community, and also and if there's any left on that, also to make sure that we're using it for education. And that I think we're going to bring. That's coming back to law and ledge. But as far as this plan here today, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and move the item. I would like to, again, see we ramp up on the staffing, Mr. City Manager. This adds us 4 more people, but let's get our full team to work together on that.
Mr. Vice Mayor, just for clarification, I will follow up with Carl Simpson, Code Enforcement. But part of the issue in ramping up also is that we had some challenges through our hiring process with backgrounding, and so. But we will follow up on that and absolutely look at how we can ramp up these resources quickly.
Totally understand. We want the highest quality employees. I think that I think is an important piece, and particularly those who are going to be here long term, focusing on this issue. Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Councilmember Ashby.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I struggle with items like this where it's a staffing plan that comes forward separate from everything else, because any item that we look at looks good in isolation, but when you don't look at it with everything else happening, it's difficult. So, for example, as Malachi comes forward and asks for there to be staffing for core funding, this is once again marijuana money being spent for something else. So it's just hard. It's not laid out against all the other alternatives. I'm struggling with it because I'm not sure I agree with these priorities, but what I'm trying to see is what's not there, which are the items that are not presented as options. It's just presented to us as what the group thinks is best. It's not presented to us as here are the tray of options. So I actually agree almost wholeheartedly with everything Eric said. Particularly about code enforcement. That's a no-brainer. It's been incredibly frustrating to me, count me amongst the council members, Vice Mayor Guerra, who have called Howard to say, what is the problem? Hire more code enforcement officers. Why do we only have 2 out of the 4? And now to add to it, and I know, Joe, you said it was based on caseload, but my understanding is that it's been based on HR and our inability to get people through backgrounds and get them hired. So I find that to be frustrating at the same time that the argument is being made. None of this funding is going to the police department when we talked about enforcement recouping their costs. And when you look at the sheet that Joe put together that shows where the money is being spent, the vast majority of it is on the police department. And then the argument given to me is, well, they can't hire right now anyway. Well, neither can code enforcement, but we're setting up 4 more positions. So I'm having a hard time seeing what's not there when there's not the whole picture laid out in front of us. And I don't like piecemeal budgets because then priorities get left behind. And then later you say to yourself, well, why didn't we fund that when we had the first round of BOT funding coming through? And it's because it wasn't on the table. And so all that's on the table, we're literally an up or a down right now. Yes, do you want this, or no, do you not want this? Nothing about what else is out there. What other potential opportunities could be funded with this? And I led on the enforcement piece on knocking down the illegal marijuana grows. And the whole point of that was that Daniel Hahn gave us a SWAT team to use when there weren't enough police resources. You remember that, Mayor? And it was great, and it's worked out well. But we're still using that. We haven't switched to some other source, so we're still short. And as you all know, one of our problems is a shortage of patrol. And when you have to pull from those specialty units, you continue to rob Peter to pay Paul. And those vacant positions, while they're not being filled, the funding is being used as we move people around for these types of programs. So I'm not going to support this item, even though I do like that positions are being added to the city attorney and to community development, and I probably would have supported that if we had broken this out and done a better job of explaining what all of the options are. I would have liked to have seen core specifically called out. They're not in here. These are just positions. It doesn't talk about what they'll do. So again, I don't know how many times you've been here, but again, this is not going to be funding going to core. And I also have some questions about the cutbacks, right? So we're taking some money away from animal control officer because we didn't need it for cannabis, but now we're looking at cannabis as if it's something completely separate from the rest of the city when we said we weren't going to do that. And I promise you in 2 months we will be asked for an animal control officer I guarantee. We get that ask every single year by Front Street and by community members. So that's fine, but we're cutting one out of this budget right now. And so I just think it's very dangerous to look at these budgets in isolation, separate from everything else and separate from all the impacts that they have. Another issue I have with it is that at least half of this diocese said they want to see cannabis money go to youth. Councilmember Schneer ran an entire campaign on it. But this funding is not going to youth. This funding is not going to youth at all. This funding is going to staffing, and some of those staffing are positions that we can't fill because we can't do background checks. So I don't know what to say about that other than I just don't think it's a smart strategy to move it forward right now. Probably most of this is the right thing to do, but outside of the larger lens of looking at it in context with everything else we're doing in June, I don't think the timing is right. So that's just, might be voting alone on that, but that's where I'm at.
City Manager?
I just want to clarify, this decision to bring this forward separate from the mid-year budget was something we talked about, and I wanted to take it separately just because we've had this discussion about enforcement for some time, and we want to bring that back as soon as we had updates for it. But, you know, I absolutely get your point in rolling it into mid-year, and we just didn't do it at this point.
To be clear, I do not think it should have been rolled back to mid-year. I know that's what Laney wanted to explain to me. I think it should have been rolled forward to a conversation with June in the context of everything else.
Okay. We'll have a vote soon. Councilman Carr.
Very soon, because my comments are going to be brief. First of all, I'd like to call up Malachi. Could you explain why you think we need an equity officer?
Thank you, Councilman Carr, for that question. An equity officer or manager is very important because, as you know, the core policy has certain contracting requirements for some of the larger weed companies to contract from seed to sell, as well as the ancillary types of businesses. There are hiring requirements, and I don't think it's reasonable for the city to expect that those kinds of things are going to be achieved without some focused, specific, and coordinated type of effort. One of the things that we would need an equity manager for is to coordinate activities between, say, the police department and ensure outreach is happening in a way that is supporting enforcement, but supporting enforcement in a way that would have those who've been impacted by the war on drugs and qualify for the core program, have those folks be outreach to build their trust that it is safe and supportive to come out of the shadows. Because if we're just using police to eliminate the competition, then that's not an answer, that's not a solution. And so an equity manager is important for those reasons, and thank you for the question.
And Joe, you don't think you need one?
I think I can always do more with more.
Does that mean you need one or you don't need one?
You know, I think some of the issues that Mr. Amen is bringing up are very complicated and are, very worthy. I think they're part of a much bigger conversation around enforcement and what does that look like moving forward, really over the next year, and how does enforcement of illegal residential cultivation begin to interact with the community, and what happens when these become more owner-occupied homes. And I think that's some of the things that he touched on. My, I guess, assumption in this budget request that the bulk of that coordinating work as it related to the core program and its interface with the city would be managed by the core program awardee that has yet to been.
So you're going to have some further discussions with Malachi about this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, second issue. When we go and do a raid on the house and we find there is a marijuana grow, we take some action against the owners of the property. and in some cases we settle as opposed to going to court. How much do we settle for? What percentage are we getting out of these settlements?
Right now, council member, it's approximately 25% of the penalties issued on average.
I want to, can I answer that do you mind?
Yes, Mr. Attorney.
Because, no, I am not an attorney, but I've spent a lot of time looking at the numbers. We've settled about $2 million worth of penalties out of an $8 million pot. So $8 million in fines we've got, and that's where Susanna gets the 25%. It's very, very early. In most of these processes, including this, we have probably $60 million worth of fines outstanding, and there's a lot of work, and the attorney's office has been doing terrific work on this. There are probably, I forget, how many appeals do you have going on?
We probably have about $45 million worth of appeals.
So and I'm happy. I mean, I spent a couple hours today going through these numbers. I'm happy to sit down with you if you want.
I just want to know how much, for every dollar that we claim, how much are we getting back?
So far, 25%.
25%.
But I think it's a little dangerous to think that it's going to continue like that. We need more experience to really, we don't have a significant enough N if you were doing polling, right? So I think we need a little bit more experience, and as we get that experience, I think then we'll be able to project out. But based on the numbers that we've settled so far, I wouldn't take the 25% to the bank. Does that make sense?
It's different.
I think we need to, once we've settled maybe $30 million worth of claims out of it, then we've got enough experience to say, okay, it's 25%, that's what we're getting, we'll continue to get that, but we're nowhere near that. The attorney's office is ramping up on this, and we have so many in flux right now, we have to see what those look like, and then we'll come back. I mean, if you did a poll and you talked to 10 people, you wouldn't say, I'm going to get elected based on those 10 people. And that's kind of where we are right now. You need, a bigger sample. We just don't have that yet.
If we're asking for 25%, we're going to get 25%.
Well, we can ask for a lot more than 25%, but this is based on negotiations over time.
Pay your way out.
We don't start at 25%.
Can we go ahead? Let's see if we can get to closure on all this, please.
The numbers.
Okay, it doesn't quite make sense to me at this point, but I'm willing to sit down with you. Final question, Mr. City Manager. If we approve this plan to ramp up our enforcement efforts by adding FTEs in several places, looking at the maps that I see, the number of houses is getting fewer. Do we have a drawdown plan? When we reach X number of houses, do we eliminate positions? How do we handle that?
Councilmember Carr, if I could, we have been, as part of this discussion with each department, there have been talks about this workload diminishing over time and the need for those positions to either be absorbed through vacancies or through general attrition. We recognize that within the totality of, especially the work around illegal residential cultivation, that if we are successful, we should work ourselves out of a job to a significant degree on that front.
How do the FTEs go away?
Well, so let me chime in here. So between the code enforcement and police and fire, if they're assigned to this enforcement kind of task force, and if kind of the demand goes away for those services, we have plenty of opportunities for those individuals and those FTEs to go back into those respective departments. So
I understand the individuals can be absorbed through attrition, but we're approving FTEs.
Those FTEs would go back to fill those vacancies that we have in those various departments: code, police, fire.
That's the people who.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, just really quickly, I don't know if you've gotten a second yet. I'm going to second this. I mean, we've always said this is a work in progress. There's no model out there that we're going for. The original estimates on staffing across the board were just that. They were estimates. We didn't really know how many permits, how many illegals, all of those pieces. So, you know, this will probably come back at some point as it goes down. I think, Larry, your question is really correct. It's not number of houses as much as where do we want to look at usage. So if somebody's got 50 plants in their house and we know that from their electricity usage, do we want to, is that worth busting, right? Yeah, so I think that's what we need to figure out over time, and that's where we'll draw down on the thing. So with that, I'm fine on the core piece. I believe that's going to come back in March, hopefully early March, and we can talk about the needs for any other additional staffing through that program.
Okay, this has been moved and seconded. Can we take a vote, Vice Mayor? Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We've got 2 noes. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. The measure passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Let us now, I guess, first take council ideas and questions, and then we will end with the public testimony for items not on the agenda. If we can keep the council items brief, I would appreciate it, because it's getting late. I'm going to stay. Okay? All right. Councilman Harris?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll keep it real brief. I'll just announce one thing. Fire Station 15 will have a grand opening this Saturday, February 9th at 10 a.m. at 1640 West El Camino. I'm excited about this because it's a great amenity for the South Natomas, Gardenland, Northgate communities.
Good, thank you. I will be there. Councilmember Ashby.
Quickly, Mayor, on behalf of Councilmember Warren, who left, City Manager, he wanted me to ask, and I think you know this, for the timing on bringing back the flavored tobacco ordinance. I understand it is cleared law and ledge and should be coming back to council, but wants it on a soon agenda. Do you have a date for that yet?
We're looking at March as well.
March, okay. And then for myself, I know I mentioned this in the last item, but just a quick shout out to any of the organizations that serve women and children experiencing homeless. My office is hosting a roundtable on February 20th to talk to those providers and try to gather information on what they perceive to be the biggest challenges or hurdles in our region right now to serving women and children who are experiencing homelessness. If you know one of those organizations that has not yet been invited, please reach out to my team. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Carr?
Sweet Potato Festival this Saturday, 10 o'clock, Pinnell Center. Come out and taste some sweet potato pie.
What time?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock Saturday?
Saturday.
I'll try. Councilman Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. I will be there for the Sweet Potato Festival. Looking forward to it. If you need help with your taxes, the Robert Waters Library will have tax assistance on Wednesday, February the 6th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also on February the 7th, cyberbullying and internet safety provided by ACC Services. Please join the Victims of Crime Resource Center as they discuss what to do if you're receiving threatening or inappropriate requests online. You can register by contacting ACC. We also have a number. You can call my office to get the number. And then the final announcement is Community Hall in your neighborhood will take place in the Valley High community at the Mack Road Community Partnership Building located at 7833 Center Parkway on Thursday, February the 7th at 6 p.m. So you don't have to come to City Hall. City Hall will come to you.
Finally, Councilman Guerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will be a Elmhurst Neighborhood Association Community Forum on Aggie Square and also the transit-oriented development and what improvements we're doing on Stockton Boulevard on Monday, February 11th at 6:30 p.m. at the Coloma Community Center. Also, it is Lunar New Year, and I want to remind folks of the events that are coming up for Lunar New Year. First, on February 9th, we have the Little Saigon Lunar Flower Festival over by John's Furniture. There's also the Little Saigon Tet Festival on February 16th over on that same location. And on February 9th, we have the Year of the Pig celebration and cultural program at Hiram Johnson on February 9th. So I want to wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. for our folks in the Vietnamese community and the Indo-Chinese community. I apologize if I ruined this, but Kung Hei Phat Choi for our Vietnamese community, Chuk Mon Nam Moi, and for our Mien community, Pang On Shan. Now, I really screwed that one up. I'm sorry.
I think you did a great
Coy,
job.
I'm so sorry for
I
over
think you
there,
did
but
a great job.
yeah. Thank you and happy Lunar New Year.
Thank you. Let's take public comments on items not on the agenda, and then we will adjourn.
I have 19 speakers signed up, but I believe some people have left. The first is Jeffrey Tartagia, Shauna McDaniels, then Robert Copeland.
Jeff Tartagia. Eric, this is what I was talking about, and Mayor, you should know very well much about this, but now I will talk about exactly what you're observing right here. Please consider moving public comment to after the consent doc, because just like everybody else here, you don't want to hear these things. Nobody is here. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is jump bike. Of course, Steve Henson is gone, and as you will see, there's some serious problems. I have been reporting them to the 311. I will continue to report them to 311 as an accessibility issue. I'm wondering how your Disability Advisory Commission and what you're doing about these attempts to sources. There's a few others, but since I don't have your attention, I will draw the fact that you have had this bathroom over here of disability that for a year had a broken, should we say, toilet cover, seat cover. For a year we mentioned just like the maps. And it took finally where somebody said, oh, we understand your maps for your visitors. You still have not corrected. Your Dawson downtown community puts 5th Street where 4th Street is for your, should we say, boutique motel that you're planning to construct on J Street. The last thing I will bring to your attention is you invested in software and you have a serious problem with J Street right now. You've had it all week where because of 15th Street right turn lane, and you still seem to have not even paid attention to it. Lastly, we'll offer in the few seconds is your C3, which I hope you know, and I appreciate you guys that participated in the disability account, but we likewise said how many people downtown were counted.
Your time's complete. Our next speaker is Shauna McDaniels, Robert Copeland, and Matthew Silver. Is Ms. McDaniels here?
Move on.
Robert Copeland, then Matthew Silver.
Well, I thought the last city council meeting 2 weeks ago was a disgrace by the city council. They should have took a time out